Okay, welcome to the PWHT podcast, the show dedicated to helping hockey families navigate the journey of off-ice training and preparation. I'm Dr. Zach Rourke, founder of PWHT, and I'm here to answer your questions and provide actionable tips to help you reach your potential. Each episode is bite-sized, just around 10 minutes, and packed with information you can start using today. As always, if you have a question that you want answered, reach out to us via Instagram at PWHTMN. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the secret to in-season performance. This is actually the secret to all long-term performance, in-season, off-season, or otherwise. Everybody wants to maximize their performance, but how do you do it? On today's episode, I'm going to give you the biggest secret to in-season performance. Okay, here's the tip. The tip is called the golden rule, and you've already heard me talk about it a ton. But if you use the golden rule, you'll be able to maximize your in-season performance. You're going to avoid overtraining and fatigue, and you're going to maximize your development week to week, month to month, year to year. Okay? So what is the golden rule? I've been using the golden rule for about 15 years now. And where it started was I was in grad school, and I was looking at Soviet-era research. And in the USSR, they had these sports schools. And in the sports schools, what they would do is they would go around the entire Soviet Union, and they would test all the kids at like 6 years old. And then anybody who had athletic potential, they would invite them to a sports school. Most of them were in Moscow. And they would invite them, and then they would train them. And then they would be state athletes until they either were forced out because they weren't good enough or until they retired, right? And so what the Soviets did is they had a huge exercise science wing of these sports schools, and they took data on all their athletes at all levels from 6 years old all the way through Olympian, right? And one of the things that they did empirically was they looked at training loads throughout the course of the lifetime of the athlete, and they tried to figure out what the ideal training loads were. Now, one big difference between Soviet Union training and the training that we're talking about is that the Soviets were using all the drugs you could use. So they were using, testosterone and HGH, and they kind of pioneered how you dope in sports. That makes a difference because the biggest advantage of doping is that you can train more, right? So I'm not suggesting that anybody start doping. I'm just saying that if you go and look at the research, you're going to find that the numbers are higher than what I'm going to tell you, because I'm taking into account that the doping. And so we're actually going to train a little bit less than the Soviets would recommend because we're not doping, right? So this is not an endorsement of doping. Okay, so when I took that research and then I started to try to apply it to practice, what I have found is the easiest way to talk about it is based on exposures, okay? And an exposure is a game, it's a practice, it's a workout for any sport. It's any time that you're getting together and you're actively trying to get better at your sport, or you're competing with stakes. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that, competing with stakes versus not later. But that's an exposure. So you have a game, that counts as one. You have 2 games that week, that counts as 2. You have 3 practices, now you're up to 5. You have 2 workouts, now you're at 7. And then maybe you have 2 basketball practices or something like that. If you're a multi-sport athlete, now you're at 9, right? It's that simple. You just count them up. The rules are this. There's just 2 rules. You get 8 to 10 exposures in a week, and you get 2 in a day. If you go over 2 in a day, you're starting to get this law of diminishing returns, which will turn into negative returns, okay? So that 3rd skate that you went to that day, or you had a workout, a skate, and then you went to a 2nd skate, that skate, you're actually going to do, let's say, more harm, or you're going to have more negative adaptation than you're going to get positive adaptation out of that. And so your net improvement for the day would actually have been higher if you just did the skate and the workout, or just the first 2 skates, right? So even though it might seem like, they're kids and they can go forever and they can handle anything, they really can't. Okay, so if you're a high school athlete, I use the same rule with my pros. If you're a pro athlete, high school athlete, it doesn't matter. You can only do so much and gain benefit from it. All right, so no more than 2 in a day, and then 8 to 10 in a week. Ideally, you're going to have 1 or 2 days of nothing, 1 or 2 days off. That doesn't mean you have to sit on the couch and actually do nothing. It just means don't do any organized events or compete in a high stakes environment where you're trying to get better at your game. Right? Go golfing, go play pickup basketball with your buddies. That's fine. But don't do anything where there's referees involved. Don't do anything where you've got a coach yelling at you or you're training hard. Okay? So that's our golden rule. Now, why does it work? So when it comes to long-term athletic development, which is something that I've studied a ton when I was in grad school, when it comes to long-term athletic development, what you're trying to do, the two variables that you're trying to balance are your exposure to training and your exposure to rest. Every time that you get exposed to training, you get positive and negative effects. The positive effects take longer to manifest themselves, and they manifest themselves in lower magnitude. So the idea is that you'll get a little bit better slowly over time. The negative adaptations to training are larger in magnitude, but they go away pretty quickly, okay? And that's like your fatigue from a workout, right? So you're fatigued from a workout, and this is sort of just general rule of thumb stuff, but you're looking at 24 to 72 hours to get rid of that fatigue. The problem is, what if during that 24 to 72 hours you have 6 more exposures? What'll happen is you won't be able to catch up in terms of recovery, and your training recovery balance will be thrown off, okay? And you can survive that. It's not like your training recovery balance is thrown off and then by the end of the week you break your leg or something like that. It's not like you're going to tear your Achilles if you're out of balance for a week, right? What I'm more concerned about is the seasons are long, right? And we don't just care about one season. We care about long-term development. We care about making it to the next level. We care about the next season and the next season. And eventually, if you get far enough in your career, you care about extending your career and playing more seasons, right? So how do we make sure that we're on track for that? And the easy way to do it is just try your best to follow the golden rule. 8 to 10 exposures in a week, no more than 2 in a day. Now, this is going to cause some ramifications. Most of you listening to this, if you're a parent of or you are a high school hockey player, you are going to think to yourself, I'm way over that number, right? And so the ramifications are you got to make some choices. And what I recommend to all of our families is choose the highest quality of whatever it is you're doing and say no, okay? You have to say no a lot, especially if you're a goalie, by the way. But you have to say no because you have to save your body, right? You're going to have in Minnesota, you could train, you could skate every day, all day, all hours of the day. So there's opportunity. But what you want to do is you want to just choose the best stuff for whatever it is you're trying to work on, and then say no to everything else, okay? So 8 to 10 exposures in a week, no more than 2 in a day. Choose the highest quality training of whatever kind you're interested in because you only have 10 slots in a week. And you don't want to be trying to develop through a volume-based strategy. I'm just going to do more than everybody because everybody's maxed out. You want to be able to develop through a quality-based strategy. I'm just going to do the best stuff and then I'm going to recover from it. And if you do that over and over and over, week by week, month by month, year by year, you're going to maximize your development. Okay, so then there's going to be the issue where you're going to go over 10 exposures in a week. You're going to have a tournament that comes up. You're going to have some kind of scheduling issue that's out of your control. What do? Well, when it's in season, you have games and you have tournaments and stuff like that, you got to play them. You're not going to just sit out a game. We're not doing load management. That's not how this system and this sport works. You go and you play your games. But what you can do is if you know that that's coming up, you can back off leading up to that. So back off your workouts, pull a couple workouts out, pull a couple conditioning sessions out. Maybe your coach is smart and they pull a couple practices out or they're a little lighter on those practices. Or you can do that on the back end. So when you get back from that tournament or that really heavy loaded week, now you're going to pull out some exposures, and you're going to focus on rest. Okay. So that's, it's pretty high level. It's supposed to be really easy to use. All that you need to do is count your exposures. If they get out of whack because you have some kind of scheduling issue, then pull back exposures either before, after, or maybe compromise with full. But you could think of it as, I'm trying to shoot for averaging between 8 and 10 per week. If you run over consistently, especially during your season, the odds of you having an injury late in your season are way higher. And this is the game that I work on with my NHL players all the time, is how do we make sure that you're healthy at the end of the season and in the playoffs? And the way that we do it is through the golden rule throughout the entire season. Okay? So that's what I have for you today. If you're looking to learn more about how you can achieve your hockey goals, visit us at perfectworldhockey.com. While you're there, you'll find more podcast episode articles and resources to support your hockey journey. If you're interested in taking your training to the next level, you can also schedule a consultation. We'd love to hear more about your goals and see how we can help you with your off-ice development. Follow us on Instagram or YouTube at PWHTMN. Join the conversation and connect with the PWHT family. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on the PWHT podcast.